The college football playoff is expanding again?
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free wherever it's in the podcast and on YouTube. Happy Thursday. I am Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI. And earlier this week, Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports, who, if you don't know, Ross is a very respected name in sports media, college sports specifically, and usually pretty spot on. But he wrote about the college football playoff. Essentially, they're meeting again to discuss the possibility of expanding again. And I feel like every time we hear, oh, they're meeting to discuss the possibility of this, it happens, right? It's an inevitable thing. They're not meeting with this because they're not interested in it and they just want to cover their bases. They're meeting about this because they have every intention of actually doing it and they need to kind of discuss the logistics of it. And in Ross's article, he wrote that the expanded college football playoff would be either 14 or 16 teams. Which to that, my response is just go 16 already. Like if you're already talking about 14 or 16, we know how this goes, right? This was always the thing. When they expanded to 12, everybody said, hey, well, they're doing 12, they might do 16 at some point. Then you just know that they're eventually going to get there, right? And hopefully when they get to 16, they'll stop. I am not someone that really cares for expansion. Not that I'm a traditionalist. Like I'm not saying that, which I hate that there's expansionist or traditionalist, and like we have things that are now labeled in that way. It's kind of crazy. It's like a political thing, but it's not. But I'm not someone that cares for expansion. I'm not a traditionalist. I'm not an expansionist. Honestly, I just hate expanding right now when you haven't even let the latest expansion settle, right? I hate expanding for the honest reason of why they're looking at expanding, right? And I know that there's a few things here, right? First off, you can't say expanding from 4 was a bad idea because we just saw a 7 and an 8 seed go at it for the national championship. So you can't say, oh, going from 4 to 12 was a bad idea because the 7 and 8 just won it or just made it to the championship. So you can't say that, right? So there's that. Expansion in itself, not a bad thing. But you're expanding strictly because I also know that the insider program, I had a couple of people actually, which I had never really heard this response before, but I had a couple of people from the insider program say that it's basically like a participation trophy thing, right? Like it's like, oh yeah, like we're all just giving more people playoff opportunities so that more people can say that they made the playoff and more people can do this. And that's not what it is, okay? It's just not. What it is that all they are doing is thinking no matter who we have in the college football playoff, we are going to get millions and millions and millions of viewers here. We are going to get millions and millions and millions of eyeballs on all of these games. Do you get what that translates to in terms of media rights? Because what it translates to is we are going to get millions and millions and millions of dollars. That's what it is. It's not about a participation trophy. It's not even about truly finding the best college football team. It's not about any of that. It's about how can we line our own pockets even more, because that's really all they care about. That's it. All they care about is how can we possibly make more money from this? Oh, expand. And in this expansion, whether it's 14 teams or 16 teams, either model would go with I think they're calling it the 4-4-2-2-1-1, which is 4 auto bids to the SEC and the Big Ten, 2 auto bids to the ACC and the Big 12, 1 auto bid for the Group of 5, and either 1 or 3 at-large bids. 1 at-large bid if you go to 14 teams, 3 at-large bids if you go to 16 teams. That would basically be Notre Dame gets an auto bid and 2 at-larges if you go with 3 at-larges. Which I'll also say this, because I know that people keep talking about the Group of 5. And you go, oh, but the Group of 5, like they should just get their own playoff. Okay. I don't know how this would shape up or shape out for who plays when, but it is entirely possible. Let's say the Group of 5 goes to a 4-team playoff, right? Group of 5 goes to a 4-team playoff earlier than the actual college football playoff. And then the winner of the Group of 5 playoff gets an auto bid. I don't care when people say, like, oh, like the Group of 5 shouldn't get an auto bid because they're not going to win those 4 games. They're not going to do this. I just hate that thought process. Just because how often have we seen teams make runs deeper than we thought they would? Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois in ugly fashion. And at the start of the college football playoff, nobody was really looking at Notre Dame and saying, oh, they're going to be in the national championship. They made it. Nobody was really looking at Ohio State and definitively saying that they're going to make the national championship, because 2 games before that, we saw them lose to Michigan. I think Ohio State had a significantly higher chance than Notre Dame, but I don't like the thought process that, oh, this team's not going to win this team's not going to win that, especially as we're seeing some Group of 5 teams start to get at least moderately competitive NIL-wise. And we've got revenue sharing that should raise the floor. I think that's what revenue sharing will do. I think it'll raise the floor for a lot of programs. And the Group of 5 doing that, absolutely possible. So I hate the thought that no Group of 5 team should get an auto bid. I do very much agree with, it was Ryan Day that said it yesterday, that there should be no, oh, if you won your conference, you get a bye week. It should just be the 4 best teams, because what really happened this year was teams that won their conference got the auto bye. And what it led to is Arizona State and Boise State being top 4 seeds, and that should not have been the case. The teams that bounced those teams, Penn State and Texas, should have been in there, right? Maybe Ohio State should have been one of the top 4 instead, but again, they were bumped down. But it should be the top 4 teams are the top 4 seeds. That's it. There shouldn't be any conference reseeding unless you're outside of the top 14 or 16 and you won your conference. They get you an auto bid, or you get the auto bid. That's what it should be, okay? I hate the thought that you don't deserve or that you get a bye week just because you won your conference. Which, by the way, if you go to 14 teams, there are 2 teams that get a first-round bye. And if you go to 16 teams, there are no buys. Worth noting, just saying. I don't know for the 14 teams if it would just be the top 2 Power 4 auto bids get it, or what it would be, if it would be at 1 SEC, 1 Big Ten, since they have 4 auto bids as well. I don't know what it would be there, but be interested to see how it works out. It's an interesting format. I just hate the idea of expanding before you really get your 12-team playoff settled in. Because it just sounds like you're changing just to change, just for greed. Which, I don't know why I said it sounds like it is, because that's exactly what it is. But it does help the Florida Gators, right? It does help the Florida Gators. We'll talk about that when we get back with Locked On Gators. Attention, Locked On Gators fans. The future of college sports is here, and it's transparent. Before the Roy App, NIL negotiations often happened under the table, and fans didn't have a clear way to directly support the athletes they love. Now, with Roy, you get to be part of the change and support Florida athletes in the most transparent way possible. Roy, the NIL app, allows you to choose the player you want to support, decide how much to contribute, and you receive exclusive content from the athletes you back. The best part, if your player transfers, you get your money back. It's a risk-free way to show your support. There are multiple Florida Gators athletes on there that we've seen publicly endorsing Roy. Okay, I think Cam James was maybe the first one at Florida to do it, but it works. Download the Roy app now from the App Store and start backing the Florida Gators athletes the way they deserve with transparency, trust, and a real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite players. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free, whether it's in the podcast and on YouTube. And like I said, I personally, again, I don't hate expanding if there's legit logic and reasoning behind it. I do hate expanding if your main reason is let's make more money. I do really hate that, honestly. Just like I understand it. I just hate it because I feel like you're kind of imposing on the sport to make more money. But because of this expansion, Florida will have a significantly higher chance of making it, right? Like if you went to the 14 team or the 16 team and you didn't change the bids, it was just each of the Power 4 teams and the highest ranked Group of 5 team, and then 9 auto or 9 at-large bids or whatever it may be, Florida's chances of making it go up decently, right? Because then all you got to do to make it is be top 14 or be top 16. But that's not how it works. Here, the SEC getting 4 auto bids means that you just have to be one of the top 4 teams, right? And I will also say this, because getting the 4 auto bids obviously significantly increases your chance of making it. But I'm torn on it. Like if Florida makes the playoff, I won't be upset. Obviously, I won't be annoyed if the Florida Gators make the playoff for any reason. However, I want to see Florida make it because they're an elite team, not because the college football playoff keeps getting expanded, right? Like I want to see Florida make it because they are one of the top teams in the country, not because they're allowing more teams into the college football playoff. So I'll say that. We'll talk about how Florida has positioned themselves for this and how they can continue to next. Don't worry about that one. But I also feel like, let's say hypothetically they go to 16, because I truly believe that they will eventually get to 16, regardless of what they decide about 14, whether they're sticking with 12, going to 14, or going to 16. I think the fact that you've now had multiple conversations about this, eventually you're going to get there, right? Eventually people are going to shift to that side, especially when you start throwing money in their face. That's going to happen. So when you get to 16 teams, you're going to have more SEC teams make it, right? Because you had this year 4 Big Ten teams make it and 3 SEC teams make it. Okay? You had 4 Big Ten teams make it, 3 SEC teams, and at least if you kept it with the, again, proposed auto bids that we're talking about, you know, those 4, then you're getting a 4th SEC team, which would have been Alabama, right? Because you had Oregon, Penn State, Indiana, and Ohio State all make it as your 4 Big Ten teams. Had you gone to 16, that would not have changed. It still would have been 4. You had Georgia, Texas, and Tennessee make it for your SEC teams, which, by the way, if conference champions didn't get the auto bids, Alabama would have been in. Alabama was the 11th ranked team in the rankings, but because Arizona State needed an auto bid and Clemson needed auto bids, Alabama did not get in. That's also the same reason Miami didn't get in, right? So when we talk about the auto bids bumping teams out, that's great because Clemson won the ACC, so they had to get in automatically. They were the 12th seed. Alabama would have been in if that wasn't the case. So really, especially if you go to 16 teams, you're putting 5 SEC teams in there, basically. Like, yes, you would get your 4 at large, or you would get your 4 SEC bids, which, again, this past year, that would have had Alabama. But let's say you do your 4 Big Ten, 4 SEC, your 2 ACC, 2 Big 12. Like, the Big 12 thing would have shaken it up because then BYU would have gotten in, and Clemson would have missed. Miami would have gone up. Again, we're just looking at the rankings, not looking at the not looking at the conference championship. But that would have changed that. If you are looking at it that way, Alabama would have gotten an auto bid, okay, and the at-larges would have gone to Ole Miss and South Carolina. If you add the 4-4-2-2-1-1, whatever the hell you want to call it, worst defense ever. Alabama's in, Miami's in, Ole Miss is in, and South Carolina's in. You're getting the top 6 SEC teams in there. So if you go up to that, like, Florida's going to make it at some point, right? How Florida, also, let's say this. Based on how they ended the year and who they beat, Florida should have finished like 24-25. I don't think that's a crazy thing to say either way. I think Florida should have finished 24th, 25th, but whatever. Like Colorado also went 9-4, but Florida had a significantly tougher schedule. That's neither here nor there. I'm not here to argue that. But if we're talking about 6 SEC teams making it, Florida's a top 6 SEC team this year, and they likely will be in 2026. Again, I know that people always get mad at what I say about the team and about Billy, and I want to make this abundantly clear. This is a fantastic roster that the Florida Gators have built. Okay? It is. Billy Napier's done a great job building the roster. A few question marks, but nothing overly concerning right now. My concern is not the roster. It is the coaching ability right now. Okay? So it's not that I'm low on Florida or I hate Florida. It's that I need Billy Napier to prove to me that he could do it for more than just the final 4 games of the season. That's it. Final 6 games of the season even. I don't care. I need him to do it for a full season. And we haven't seen that. Even when they've had hot stretches in his first 2 seasons. We haven't seen it for a full season. I am very interested to see how this would impact the out-of-conference schedule. Because we saw quite a few teams that made the college football playoff have, we'll say, I don't want to say weak, but weaker out-of-conference schedules than Florida had, right? Alabama almost made it. They played freaking Mercer. Okay? They had a couple games that were on the out-of-conference, right? Florida was one of the very few teams that had a difficult out-of-conference schedule. And Florida did. Miami, UCF, Florida State. At least, look, I know Florida State was bad. I know UCF was bad. They're still Power 4 opponents that you put. Even if you're putting the worst Power 4 opponents, you're still putting Power 4 opponents and then an FCS school in Sanford. You didn't play any Group of 5 team. Okay? I think that we'll see a lot of teams start to pick lighter out-of-conference schedules. Just because you get the wins, you get up there, you keep your ranking secured, especially if there's 3 at-large bids, having that just win percentage and that win next to your name will help you. I would love to see tougher schedules and go, oh, hey, well, there's more teams that make it, so we can risk this. But that's not how teams are going to make it. They're going to go with weaker out-of-conference schedules, unfortunately. The Florida Gators, positioned for success long-term, especially with an expanding college football playoff. We'll talk about that when we get back with Locked On Gators. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day, every day. We are available daily and free wherever listen to the podcast and on YouTube. To wrap up today's episode, we are talking about how the Florida Gators can position themselves for the future, or how they are positioning themselves for the future, right? Let's say this again. And I do think the significance of me saying that I spoke about how Florida's roster is built and how I think they've been doing a fantastic job of building the roster to remain competitive. I know that we can talk about transfer portal and being underwhelmed with who they added. My issue isn't even so much that I'm underwhelmed with who they added. I just think that some of the players they added just weren't SEC starter quality players. That's it. It's not that I'm like, oh, like you should have gone after these big names. I think that some guys you just shouldn't have, which is fine. Neither here nor there. But a lot of Florida's NIL attention went to roster attention, right? Because I'm gonna be completely honest with you all. And I think that, like I've said before, I don't care if I'm right or wrong, as long as I can say that I was honest and held my head high and all that stuff. That's what matters to me. I don't care if I'm right or wrong, as long as I'm honest. Florida spent a lot of money on retaining their talent, right? Even guys that wanted to come back, they're going to at least go, hey, like, I'm going to need money. I'm not going to say anybody's pocket specifically, and I'm not speaking about this as a definitive stance, but like Jake Slaughter and Austin Barber didn't come back to play for free. Caleb Banks and Tyreek Sapp didn't come back to play for free, right? DJ Lagway did not come back to play for free. There are guys who maybe didn't go after as much money as they could have. Like DJ Lagway could get a lot of money if he went into the portal. I'm going to say Florida probably wouldn't have been his highest bidder, right? But he's at Florida. So I will say that a lot of Florida's NIL went to roster retention, which is good. We talk all the time about continuity. And also roster retention in this case is especially good because you actually have a good roster. Like you're retaining a good roster. So love that. The use of the transfer portal for Florida is more important now than ever before. And here it's strictly about quality, not quantity. Okay. Even if you're going in and getting a backup, if you're getting a guy that you can say, all right, if there's an injury, he could step in and play and we're not worried about him screwing everything up, great. It's quality. If you're looking for a backup quality player and you get that, that's good. If you're looking for a starter quality player and you get a backup quality player, not good. But it's about quality, not quantity. So I don't care about seeing, oh yeah, Florida went out there and got 16 guys. I don't know. I think I said the number last week that I was like, okay, that's a lot. It was like 12, 13. Okay, if you get more than that, that's a bit egregious. So for Florida, right now, the use of the transfer portal is about supplementing needs, which this is how we've always talked about it, right? Build your foundation through high school. Get your guys. And then use the portal to supplement needs or add some star players here and there. Like that's the way to approach this. And there's people who are going to say, oh, like just go into the portal, get the best players you can. It's a talent acquisition business. Just get the best players. That's not going to work. It's just not. And until we see it work, I'm going to continue saying it's not going to work, right? There's guys who are going to say, hey, don't care about the portal at all. Just go do your high school recruiting, develop the guys, and call it a day there. You know how I know that didn't work? Because Clemson started getting players from the portal this past offseason. That doesn't work. You have to have a good mix. And Florida has a good mix right now. High school players that you can develop. Portal to supplement needs. J. Michael Sturdivant. Tommy Doman. Go get your guys. Harrison Bailey. Go get your guys. Keep hammering the premium positions, which is something that, again, I really think Florida is going to key in on this even more. Even more than usual. I think we're going to see Florida say, hey, quarterback, wide receiver, offensive tackle, edge rusher, outside corner. That's what we're hammering. That's what we need to get. Those are the positions. The right approach. Especially when we're not talking right now. While we're talking about just college football playoff expansion, we're talking about getting into that college football playoff and making your plays from there. Again, Ohio State just won it as the 8th seed. Notre Dame just lost it as a 7 seed. We're not talking about winning the national championship right now. We're talking about for getting into this expanded college football playoff. You need to be one of the top 4 teams in the SEC or one of the at-large bids, which could be either 1 at-large bid or 3 at-large bids. To be a top 16 team in the country. We'll say top 15, right? We can assume that a group of 5 teams is not going to get the rankings, regardless of whether or not we think they deserve it. We can assume a group of 5 teams is not going to get that ranking. So we'll say top 15 team. Get those premium positions. And if those premium positions are good, you will probably be a top 15 team. There's a reason that the premium positions, the most impactful positions on the field. Right now, Florida, as far as building the entire roster, doing a damn good job of making sure they have some of the best roster, one of the best rosters in the country. And this is a thing where if we're talking about a 12-team playoff still, I'm still saying Florida has a college football playoff caliber roster. That's why I go so hard on the coaching, because I think that they're the thing holding them back right now. This fantastic roster. They're positioned for long-term success here. And it's a beautiful thing to see. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day, we are available daily and free ever since the podcast and on YouTube. We will be back tomorrow. Talk more Florida Gators football for Locked On Gators. I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work, New York Giants on SI, and I'll see you all next time.